Stephanie Winkler joins us this morning. Stephanie is a fourth grade teacher in leave from Madison County Schools, currently in her second term as the state president of the Kentucky Education Association. She represents 45,000 members of the KEA, which includes active teachers, classified school employees, retirees, and pre-service teachers as well. Stephanie, good morning to you.
Good morning, Larry. Thanks for having me.
Good to have you on the Big Dog this morning, and I'll tell you what, I never in my wildest dream realized that a statement on my station would ravel so many feathers. So we invite you to come and speak on behalf of the teachers this morning and kind of clarify and verify a little that interview and give us your thoughts.
Well, thanks. I appreciate the opportunity. It certainly has caused a firestorm of genuine emotion and brings to light a lot of issues, good or bad. But I did want to specifically address some of the comments made by the governor. He used phrases to describe people like me and my colleagues like selfish, short-sighted, misinformed, and ignorant. And I just want to start by giving some examples of here's how selfish some of the people in Taylor County are. Let's take, for example, Troy Young. He's a retired high school math teacher from Taylor County. He spent his entire career not just teaching math, but he spent his nights, his weekends, not just being a high school basketball coach, but volunteered his time after school, before school, on the weekends, tutoring students in math for free. He did ACT prep with students. He helped kids prepare for AP exams. And he's retired now, as I said, but he still is doing free tutoring for students as a retiree. He's still a public servant. That's how selfish we are as educators. Here's another example of how selfish we are, Governor. Tanya Rogers. She's a fellow fourth grade teacher. I've known she teaches at Taylor County Intermediate. This woman initiated a program called the CARE Coalition at the school. And they have taken all their employees at that school and had one-on-one mentoring programs so that no student went without an adult that they could trust to go to if they have issues or problems, just need to vent, talk their struggles with. She buys school supplies just like every other educator, just like every other custodian, paraprofessional, or a bus driver that buys a backpack or school supplies for their students who don't have them. She also picks a student a month to provide for anything that they need, whether it's clothes or a pair of shoes, anything that student needs for the month. She takes that out of her pocket and makes sure that those kids are taken care of in her fourth grade classroom. Let's talk about this short-sightedness. Here's what's short-sighted. If we don't, as lawmakers, take a look at the future of our professions that are at stake, if we were to enact Senate Bill 1, we would be putting the future of not just public education, but public service in general. All public service workers go into their professions to serve the public. They're not asking for big, fat cat salaries. They're not asking for anything more than to be fulfilled as an individual to provide a life of service. In exchange for that, they only expect what they're promised at the time that they're employed. And that is a contract. It's an inviolable contract, which means it can't be broken. And public service employees have a contract that they feel like would have been put in jeopardy. And on several different counts, Senate Bill 1 would have violated that contract. Little do people know, there's just one example, just on the education front. There is currently one student enrolled in a teacher education program in this state that is majoring to teach physics. One.
Wow.
Now, you think about how many high schools teach physics, and there's only one person in that pipeline to fill those voids. There is very little these days that goes towards recruiting, attracting, and retaining quality public education employees into our professions. Let's talk about our classified school employees. That's the bus drivers, the aides, the cooks. Little do people know that a lot of these folks only work for health insurance benefits. Many barely make a living wage because of the number of hours that are limited by those positions. They all have second and third jobs to make ends meet. We have classified school employees that pay their school districts at the end of the month for working because their salary doesn't even cover all of their health insurance premiums. Ignoring these kinds of realities is what I feel like is short-sighted. Now, let me talk about some misinformation, how misinformed folks are. Mm-hmm. The governor says that it's just a travesty that our retirees get a raise every year. Well, that's misinformation in itself. Our retirees don't get raises. They get what's called a COLA, a cost of living adjustment. Right. That, in fact, is prepaid when they're actively employed. It's not something extra that's costing more money. Our active employees prepay that COLA while they're working. And let's not forget that we're the only system that does that. There are, in fact, 8 different state retirement systems. The teacher retirement system and the CERS non-hazardous plan, which is what our classified employees contribute to, are only 2 of the 8 state pension plans. And whether you believe it or not, there's varying degrees of details within each of those plans that make it very hard to treat everyone the same. Without these cost of living adjustments, retirees that are age 70 and 80 right now, who were only making $2,000 and $3,000 a year when they first started their careers, would never be able to survive as a retiree. And here's some other information most folks don't know. Teachers in the state of Kentucky, they don't contribute to Social Security. They have a defined benefit pension plan because that's made to be a Social Security replacement. It is intended to replace the fact that there is no other income stream for a profession that's predominantly female, a lot of single females that don't receive death benefits from their spouse from Social Security because of a federal law that's in place. Some other misinformation is that we're not willing to give, that we are not willing to compromise. Most folks in Frankfurt that are making those laws seem to forget that in 2010, we came together with lawmakers, school districts, and employees, and we passed what's called the Shared Responsibility Plan. All those entities put in an extra percentage of payroll, extra money, to make sure that we never had to have another conversation about funding post-65 retirement health care costs. That fund has been growing exponentially and will ensure that the state doesn't have to have a conversation about teacher retiree health care. In 2013, the legislature also passed more reforms in the form of a hybrid cash balance plan for our classified school employees, which changed folks from the defined benefit. And it's only been 4 years since that plan has passed. But yet there's been no evaluation as to whether or not that's truly going to save our state any money, whether that type of plan is going to be healthy for the general fund of our state. Some other misinformation is that Kentucky is the highest average teacher salary of surrounding states. How many of those other surrounding states require every teacher within 5 years of becoming a teacher to have a master's degree, which automatically increases their pay on the salary schedule because it's based on their level of education and years of experience?
Mm-hmm.
Almost none. Teachers in Kentucky, as I said, also don't pay into Social Security. Their pension is almost a third of what they take home. So their salaries are not as large as what one might think because they are saving for their financial futures. This is not a one-sided conversation. It's not as if we're asking the government for a handout. We're asking them to take care of public servants jointly, employees, districts, and the state. And let me just talk about some truth that happened on that call with the governor.
Mm-hmm.
It is true that when the governor was running for office, he told everyone this was exactly what he was going to do. He told everyone that he was going to make sure that pensions were funded, which we greatly appreciate because we need our pensions funded. He also said that he knew that we could not keep defined benefit pension plans, which we wholeheartedly disagreed with, but he told everyone that when he was campaigning. So this should not be a surprise to anyone. The other truth is that Superintendent Cook of Taylor County, he told me that if the governor's proposed budget had truly come to be, that would have meant a $1.2 million loss in general funds to Taylor County alone. And in 3 years of that kind of lack of funding would have put Taylor County schools in bankruptcy in 3 years. Those are some hard truths.
Mm-hmm.
And the last thing I want to talk about is the governor having the audacity to say that public employees are in Frankfort throwing temper tantrums. We are a united labor force, exercising our constitutional right to free speech. That's not a temper tantrum. We're public servants questioning the elimination of an inviolable contract by their elected representatives. That is not a temper tantrum. And educators speaking out for their students who can't yet speak out for themselves is not a temper tantrum. Educating the public about how public pensions are funded, earned, and distributed is not an example of a temper tantrum. Those are all examples of how we educate. It is in our blood. It's in every fiber of our being. We are here to serve the public. And when you talk about public schools, firemen, policemen, people that work in your city and county governments, people that work in that Capitol building, in the annex, people that work in the transportation department, people that work in child and health and human services, they are all there to protect and serve the public. And that is the bottom line. And to assert anything else is just simply not true.
Stephanie, well stated. I was noticing this morning in Kentucky News that lawmaker Robert Stivers says that this plan would never pass. So that is certainly good news for the teachers. Have we left out anything? Because again, we're not a talk radio station. We're not a news talk format. We're a country station that gives you or the governor or the judge executive or a school teacher or the superintendent a platform. And if he or she wants to come and use our radio station, we allow that. And so, I think someone had sent me a message yesterday that I was for the governor's plan, and I never, not one time during that interview, made any type comment. I didn't agree because I'm not in Frankfort every day, and I'm not in a classroom, nor am I a retired school teacher. So just as always, just as he does every 2 weeks, he gets on the radio and talks about things, and that was his topic of conversation on Tuesday here at this broadcast. And unfortunately, it did ruffle a lot of feathers out there. But yesterday, when I reached out to you to ask if you would like to get on the big dog and give the teacher's point of view and represent the teachers, you graciously accepted, and I appreciate that.
Well, I appreciate having the opportunity because, our professions are not given a whole lot of credit for the hidden things that happen behind the scenes. Yes, we educate and we teach reading, we teach kids how to do math, we prepare kids for professions, but it's all the things that people don't see that our educators never get credit for, never ask to get credit for.
Well, teachers change lives, and I want to go on the record as saying that I support our teachers in Kentucky. I support everything that takes the maximum care of our teachers in Kentucky while they're in the classroom and even after they retire. So I just want that to be on the record that I support our Kentucky school teachers. I also know that when the governor calls, I interview him, and there were some teachers who says, well, you should have cut him off. You should have interrupted him. Well, I give him a platform just as I do everybody else, and that was the reason that I didn't do it. I thought it would be unprofessional to interrupt him and certainly unprofessional to cut him off the air. I think that one teacher that called me yesterday said you did the right thing. You gave him enough rope to hang himself.
Mm-hmm. Well, I'm not going to comment about the governor, only to say that, we are obviously glad that Senate Bill 1 is not going to become law, but we still have a huge obstacle ahead of us, and that is the state budget. This is a session where that is the number one goal of this legislature. I feel certain that that is their goal, is to try to get a budget that makes sense for all Kentuckians. But the bottom line is not what teachers are doing wrong, not what public employees are doing wrong, not how much somebody makes, not what the governor says. The bottom line is that this Commonwealth has a revenue problem. We give away $13 billion in tax credits, and we only bring in $11 million in receipts. We are upside down in this state. And until the legislature is courageous enough to take on that problem and say, we are going to fix our financial house and get it in order, the pension problem wouldn't even be a conversation. Any government service wouldn't be a topic of conversation if we would keep revenue up with expenses. Things are more expensive now than they used to be. And public services are dependent upon public tax dollars. We as a society take for granted public service because it's just always there. We don't always think about how it's funded or what would happen if it went away. When it snows, people wake up in the morning and they expect the roads to be clear. But if we cut the transportation budget to a point where we don't have enough trucks that are viable to be on the road, or we can't afford the salt, people are going to notice. That's a public service.
Sure.
If public schools become bankrupt and there's nowhere to send your students while you're at work, people are going to notice. And all those things are dependent upon public tax dollars. So we have to find ways to create revenue so that we can fund all public services in all cabinets, not just public education, but all public services, so that our local communities are thriving, not just surviving and trying to tread water. And so I just appreciate the opportunity to try to, put some facts out there that we're not trying to do anything but fight for the kids that are, and families, frankly, that are hurting out there because they don't always get a voice. And if we're brave enough to voice for those people, then we feel like we're doing part of our job. And that is certainly not throwing a temper tantrum or doing anything but exercising our right as public advocates for the neediest of our population.
Stephanie, as we wrap this up, let me ask you a question. Would you be